So I have a promo for us to do for Popping Collars, but I was too lazy to write something, so I had AI write it for us.
Oh no. I can't wait to do this.
What's all this direction?
There's a lot of direction.
There's a lot of adverbs.
The AI really wants us to work hard on this. Here I go, enthusiastically. Welcome to Popping Collars, podcast where religion and pop culture collide in the most unexpected ways. Join Greg, I guess me, join me, Betsy, Liz, and Ricardo as they explore everything from the profound to the playful with a little twist of mystery, literature, music, and drama. We're diving into the spiritual side of true crime novels. Liz, did you get into our algorithm here? How do faith and morality play out in the darkest stories?
Ever wondered if Charles Dickens' A Tale of Two Cities has deeper religious themes? We'll break it down and maybe even compare it to a Pearl Jam song or two.
Whoa, they know us.
And when we dive into British period dramas like Downton Abbey or The Crown, we're asking, how do faith, power, and class intersect in those worlds? And that's true. We did do that.
It's not just about the big questions. We're also taking pop culture icons and how they tackle faith, redemption, and the meaning of life.
Do you want to do that again? Because I don't think we're taking the pop culture icons. We're talking about the pop culture.
I was busy being cheerful.
Yeah, he's really working hard.
So, brightly. I don't know what brightly means, so I'll just say it this way. So, whether you're into mysteries, literature, rock anthems, or Victorian tea parties, oh, this is so Anglican. Popping Collars has something for everyone. Subscribe now and join us every week for a fun, thoughtful ride.
That was great.
What a promo. Hello everyone, my name is Greg Knight, and I like watching, thinking about, and talking about movies. One of the great things about starting your own podcast is that there are some days where you actually get to talk to the creators of those movies. Sometimes more than one creator. This is one of those days. This month, I got the chance to interview two filmmakers working on two different projects. Both interviews were on the shorter side, so we're just going to pair them up in this episode. We'll start with the Justin Lin interview. Justin is the director of a new film called Last Days. Letterboxd will tell you, determined to fulfill his life's mission, 26-year-old John Allen Chow embarks on a dangerous adventure across the globe to convert the uncontacted tribe of North Sentinel Island to Christianity, while a detective from the Andaman Islands races to stop him before he does harm to himself or the tribe. What I'll tell you is that if that description sounds familiar, it's because we've got an episode of Under the Stole sitting in our archives where I interviewed documentarian Jesse Moss about his film The Mission, which was also about John Chow's fateful journey. What Lin has crafted is a dramatized look at the current state of evangelical mission work in the world, which looks a lot like religious terrorism if you're not assuming that the Christians are on the side of the angels. Justin's got a lot of ideas in this movie that unfortunately he doesn't seem to want to talk about in our 10-minute conversation. But if you're watching this movie through the lens of YouTube debate videos where winners attempt to own the libs or stick it to the fascists, then it will reveal a lot about the all or nothing mentality that young people profess in the current age of religious and political rhetoric, built in the image of people like Charlie Kirk. A quick bio before the interview. Most people will know Justin Lin from his work on the Fast and Furious franchise, helming Tokyo Drift, Fast and Furious, That's the fourth movie. Fast 5, Fast and Furious 6, and F9. He also directed Star Trek Beyond and has a whole bunch of action TV credits, including True Detective, SWAT, and the Magnum PI reboot. In addition to the blockbuster credits, he's also worked in indie filmmaking with projects like Better Luck Tomorrow and Banana Apocalypse. Justin strikes me as a born director who isn't too concerned about the scope of what he's making. He seems just as passionate about directing Joel McHale competing in a paintball competition on an episode of Community as he does sending Vin Diesel screaming down a highway, dragging a safe behind his car. I think he just absolutely loves the craft of filmmaking, wherever that takes him. So, what happens when a filmmaker doesn't really want to talk about the critiques from his own movie about the Christian missionary industrial complex? Find out when I keep things under the stole with Justin Lin. But first, here's a trailer.
A young American on an evangelical mission
to an off-limits remote tribe.
It's illegal.
I never should have ventured out to the island.
U.S. Consulate, you have an alert on a missing citizen.
John Chow, kid's a missionary. He's got a tip he might be headed to North Sentinel Island.
About the Americans, sir. There's more going on here, and you know it.
North Sentinel is the Mount Everest of the missionary world.
Exactly.
Start with something smaller.
I'm not thinking small. I'm going big.
You're not ready.
John, your mother and I have always supported you, but this is too extreme.
Look, I see you. You want to be that hero, but you got to build him the right way. From today on, this will be the story the world will know.
Is this the two of you together?
Is that a crime?
Helping someone get to North Sentinel Island is a crime. Where is John Chow? If you plan to travel to the darkest corners of the globe, you must train to survive. You should know what you're up against.
You travel halfway across the world because you think it's your job to save people. The Sentinelese wouldn't just kill you.
You've always been a dreamer, John. But it's time to wake up. I want you to come home, John.
But I'm out there in the wilderness. That's where I belong.
What has come over you?
It's the Sentinelese I care for. All they want is to be who they are, yet the world is determined to go there and destroy them.
I'm trying to help them.
You don't know the first thing about them.
Is this as far as we're willing to go?
Where's our son?
John Chow is getting away.
Just remember, if it's not you, then who?
Why are you doing this?
This is not about God.
If it's not now, then when?
Hi, Justin.
Hey,
How are
Greg.
you? Hey.
Good. How you doing?
I'm doing well. 10 minutes is not a long time, so we're going to go 0 to 100 if that's all right with you.
I'll try.
Congratulations on the film. This is a story that I've encountered several times. I know you've probably encountered it through articles and documentaries and stuff like that. Just right out of the blocks, in your opinion, when you think about the story of John Chow, do you see him as a victim of zealots, or do you see him as almost like a religious terrorist?
It's interesting, as this is the first time making a film where I'm trying to listen more than talk, because I feel like making this film, this is not about changing people's point of view. This is about trying to connect with his humanity, And I had a very strong reaction when the news broke. I was at the airport, and it wasn't until they had the banner that said John Allen Chow, 26 years old, that something struck me. It didn't sit well with me that in 20 seconds, I judged and dismissed him,
Right.
And it took reading Alex Perry's amazing article, because he got a window into John through the father, Patrick, that it really moved me and made me want to see if we can bring the story to life, but not to judge. It really, it's the exercise of, can I connect with John's humanity? And so that it led me down this 3-year journey of bringing the story to life. And it took all these amazing people from my 23 years of travel, of working from around the world to come in and shooting this film in 38 days in 5 countries.
Wow. I mean, so based on that sense of humanity from John, humanity is really about relationship. What relationship from this story do you think had the most influence on radicalizing John?
Again, I think that the way I built it was ultimately what set me down this journey was really the article, which is the father and son. And that's something that I can relate to because I have a teenage son. And I could see reading the article that, Patrick meant well. He wanted John to succeed. But what I learned is that sometimes just because I don't want my son to feel pain or go through challenges or trying to help him through stuff, I need to do it on his timeline, or else we might just miss each other. And that's what I learned from this. But also at the same time, John is a human being. He's layered. He has ambition. He's searching for sense of purpose that we can connect with, for connection. And I also got a sense that he really was trying to defy labels. He didn't want you to just box him in, and that's something I can connect with. And I think through all that, things become very fragile. And that's something that I think we can all connect with.
Yeah, certainly if you have relationships that are pulling you in different directions that have similar weight to them, right? So it's like you have friends on one side pulling you towards this devotional path. You have friends on another side sort of pulling you towards normalcy. And even that parental relationship is sort of tearing him apart, right? In researching the story, were you able to figure out what the attraction is for martyrdom amongst some Christian communities? Was that something that you thought about when you were directing this?
I think the one thing about making indie movies, you have all the time in the world, and I the one thing I'll tell you, I talked to so many people, and it was very clear that every opinion is valid. Yeah. And there were so many. And so I think it was not about finding a consensus. It was about trying to kind of, in what we're trying to do, what led John into, who grew up in a loving, warm Christian family that's in a loving, warm Christian community. How did that kid ended up on a kayak going to North Sentinel Island? So that was kind of the exercise of using, I think, a lot of his writing that he purposely left for us to read. And my first instinct was to say, well, did this really happen? Did that really happen? And that to me was not interesting because that wasn't the exercise. So the decision early on was to say, hey, I'm going to honor in the spirit of it. I'm going to use those as signposts for this story. But then there's all these gaps, and so it was very clear that he was influenced by, Hollywood films and adventure novels. And so I said, can we do the same thing, go through the same process, and in doing that, connect with his humanity. And I think to do it properly, I needed a cast that was fully committed, and I think I feel so fortunate working with Sky because he really kind of, came in and I said, look, this is not about fact finding, but we need to find and really kind of, can we find your version of John, our version of John? And he really went for it. And what's interesting is that not just with him, but all the cast, I would say 90% of what we talked about wasn't about what we're about to shoot. It was always about these characters so that they can be fully developed. And I'm very grateful for that, for the trust of the cast to be able to kind of go through this process.
When you're crafting these performances and you're working with the actors on what their motivations are and stuff, I'm thinking about the current political and religious rhetoric that's out there right now. And I wonder, do you think that the all or nothing nature of John's story has something to say about how young people view the world that they're living in today? And was that part of how you talked about this role with your actors?
it definitely was part of the conversation, you know. Again, I tried really hard not to kind of place any kind of judgment. John is of another generation, you know. It's probably a couple of generations removed from me, it feels like, this new sensibility. And I think it was about exploring that. So we did talk a lot about, you know, the sense like right now we live in a world where everything is your fingertip, but also everything is very quick to be judged and dismissed. And so those are the things that we really delved into as we were developing it, as opposed to saying, hey, this is what we're trying to explore. It was always more about like more of a, I would say more of a immersive discourse in kind of anything we're dealing with. And it's funny, when I made my first film, it was about these Asian American teens, and everybody's like, oh, that must be your story. And I was like, no, that's not my story. I grew up as a working class. And I think that's a misnomer sometimes, is that, you know, I want to be a filmmaker because I want to have a better connection with people that have very different worldviews. And to do that was to really spend a lot of time not trying to direct, not trying to push, but to really kind of submerge, talk, and hopefully have something grow and evolve.
Well, let me ask you a little bit about yourself, because you've walked in both worlds, big budget filmmaking, independent filmmaking. What are the blessings and challenges of each of those?
Well, I would say independent films, it's an impossibility, right? Like, you're not supposed to exist. When it comes to big budget tentpoles, there's a date, you know? There's a date that you're going to be in the theaters no matter what.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think, you know, I've been very fortunate. I started off when there was no opportunity, and I made a credit card movie that launched and opened up all these doors. And I was able to explore, because I didn't grow up wanting to make big action movies. It was just something I wanted to try, and I really enjoy it, you know, and I love the challenges. But also, you know, it gives me perspective, because a lot of times, because of the time crunch, sometimes we don't even have a script, and I have to, like, I'm responsible to tell that story. And so, you know, I love independent films because, you know, it's when you make film, it's art and commerce colliding. And sometimes the commerce, you're just fighting that. But when independent film, you know, it doesn't matter if it's the lead actor to the PA. They're not there for the money. They're there because they believe in either the story, me, or the project. And there's something really, it's very pure. And I think anytime I get to be a part of it, I feel very fortunate. But that being said, I also I've been very lucky, because that's where I came from. I didn't know any better. So when I make these big movies, it's actually the same thing, you know? So I think what I reflect in my 23 years, especially through Last Days, is that, you know, I've been making independent films this whole time, you know?
Oh, that's beautiful.
With different people.
I love that. Let the art be art. I love that.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah. No, thank you.
Justin, thank you so much for your time. Last Days is in theater. Go see it. Justin, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, that's one down. And now for something completely different. I also got the chance to chat with Rebecca Miller, the director of the new Apple TV series, Mr. Scorsese. Letterboxd will invite you to explore the many lives of Martin Scorsese through intimate interviews with the man himself, access to his private archives, plus conversations with Robert De Niro, Leonardo DiCaprio, Margot Robbie, Daniel Day-Lewis, Steven Spielberg, and more. What I'll tell you is that as a Scorsese nerd, this is like catnip. Rebecca does a tremendous job of searching for and finding a family man who seems uncomfortable with relationships, a Hollywood icon who is ostracized by the town, a saint who's a sinner, and spends his entire career trying to figure out how violent, capricious, selfish human beings can ever sniff a heavenly reward. This is a great documentary that will teach and inspire the artistically and religiously curious without deifying or disparaging its subject. As for the bio for my guest, this is maybe the most ridiculous one I've ever done because Rebecca Miller is way too important an artist for a paragraph like this, but for consistency's sake, we'll do it anyway. You may know Rebecca's dad, the iconic American playwright Arthur Miller. You may also know Rebecca's husband, the iconic Oscar-winning actor Daniel Day-Lewis. You may finally know Rebecca's son, Ronan Day-Lewis, whose debut film Anemone was just released this past month. But those are just relationships. Rebecca has been acting and directing for decades, with credits in Regarding Henry, Consenting Adults, and Personal Velocity. She's a painter, she's a sculptor, she's a photographer. Name an artistic discipline, and Rebecca has probably excelled in it. I will also say, personally, that she is as gracious and delightful as you would hope she would be. I'm an idiot talking to people in my laundry room, so she doesn't need to take time to consider responses to my stammering questions, and yet she gave me thoughtful answers over a considerable amount of interview time, which is so incredibly cool. So what happens when a nobody talks about cinema royalty with a master artist? Find out when I keep things under the stool with Rebecca Miller. But first, here's a trailer.
Who are we? Are we intrinsically good or evil? This is the struggle. And I struggle with it all the time. Where are we going? What stories do we want to tell? I knew I could express myself with pictures, but I had to find my own way.
First of all, congratulations on the series. Just really amazing. As a Scorsese fan, I was just glued the whole time. I'm wondering, why is this the time for the Scorsese documentary? Did you get a sense that he was sort of coming to an end, or what's going on?
Well, yeah, like I wanted, it was more me wanting to make another documentary and my producing partner saying, well, what would be your favorite subject? And me thinking of Martin Scorsese, because I was interested in his spiritual journey and how it dovetailed or didn't with some of the violence in his films, and like what was that character, like where does all that, how do you put it all together? And so that was my kind of my first stepping stone, really. It was more that than thinking, he's however old he is, but although that may have had part of to do with why he decided to finally make a film like this.
Yeah, I can see that. I feel like it's intentional that you call this a film portrait. When I saw that pop up on the title, I was like, oh, that's really interesting. What an interesting artistic term, because you're trying to capture the essence of somebody, right? Did you feel like you captured the person of Martin Scorsese? And was there a thread that maybe you wanted to follow that you felt like he didn't really want to go down?
Well, I wanted to call it a portrait because I think a portrait implies a kind of intimacy with the portraitist and the subject, that or an approach that isn't objective, but rather involves some sort of point of view, which I wanted to admit to. And also I wanted to get ideally I wanted the viewer finally to feel that they knew Martin Scorsese by the end of it in some way. It's a portrait through his films, but so in a sense, it's a film portrait. It's a portrait of the films. It's a portrait of the man. In this case, you can't really take the man out of the films or the films out of the man.
I want to dig into the saint-sinner sort of dichotomy that you've set up in this, but I do have one other question, just sort of about him as a person. His kids are so fascinating in this, and those interviews I thought were incredibly revealing because they show their knowledge and maybe more importantly their lack of knowledge of him sometimes, especially with his older daughters. I noticed that he didn't really necessarily talk about his past relationships. Mostly he talked about his current relationship. Was that intentional on his part? Does he want to maybe focus on his current family and not really think about what had happened before, relationships before?
I think there's an implication. He talks about, there are families you can't raise. There are, he talks about the dissolution of his marriages. He talks about, to a degree, I guess. But I think inevitably when a person has multiple families, like as 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 Domenica says in the film, it's as if we had three different dads, and that's kind of fascinating how each child gets a different, kind of almost like a different persona as the person develops.
Mm-hmm. Really interesting. It sort of makes for this fractured image of this person, because you're seeing from all these different angles. Anyway, the Saint Center aspect, of which I really loved, that it felt like something that you really wanted to dig into with this documentary, and so I appreciated the way that it was set up. Let me come at it this way. Daniel Day-Lewis has a quote in here that goes something like that Scorsese is a filmmaker by trade, but he's got the vocation of a man of the cloth. I loved that word vocation because it was kind of this calling. Resonates with me as a former seminarian, right? This idea that you have this calling to sort of wrestle with God or to argue with God. That's kind of like what's in your heart. Let me start by asking, in your conversations with Martin Scorsese, did you get the sense that he's at peace with his faith? Or is this sort of a constant source of struggle for him?
I definitely got the sense that it's an ongoing relationship. And as he says in the film, like, when you really understand your faith, you'll be dead. You're feeling your way in the dark, but the important thing is you keep making progress. And I think that's really important, that, faith isn't a stasis. It isn't a static thing. It's something that moves and continues to move throughout a life, And he talks about having been close to the church when he was very little, sort of moving away from it, trying to kind of find his way back, not finding his way back, then finding, and then kind of coming to a kind of comfort with it and a sort of closeness. So it's kind of like it's a living thing, I think, that relationship.
And so much of it feels like it's informed by his childhood and that sense of threat, I guess, maybe struggle, violence that existed outside of his window. Do you think that the way that he uses violence and struggle in his movies, that he's trying to unlock something about how he grew up?
Well, I think one of the things that we discovered, David Bartner, the editor, and I, as we really intensely reviewed these long conversations that are the backbone of this whole thing, you really felt the way that the man and the films were kind of co-creating each other. It wasn't like, oh, this happened to him, so he put it in a film. It was more like a kind of a dance, or I think of it as a tango almost, where the two are entirely dependent on each other. And for him, the moments where he felt like he was losing the muse or wasn't able to create anymore, he actually came close to death, because for him, making art and making his art and living are actually the same thing. And just as, like, there's a moment where Nick Pileggi talks about how when he went to the movie theater and he was a child with terrible asthma, and that was where there was air conditioning and he could breathe, so that literally it was like life or death, like he could breathe inside a movie theater, and that kind of that sense of it being life to him. Mm-hmm. But then also, something he says is also that there's a religious connection between having a gift, which is one of my favorite things he says, is that, like, you have a gift and you have to utilize the gift. And it's like that's also part of it, like a sense of obligation that he has.
The interviews with his friends growing up are fascinating. Do they have a sort of introspective nature to them the way that he does, or because it feels like he feels like a part of the community but also a bit of an outsider to that community, maybe in the sense that he is sort of sensitive and thoughtful about these things.
Well, definitely, I think that he both was very, it seemed like, he had really close friends. Like you have these great moments in the film where his old friends are talking about the time that they had to, one of them used a pencil to stick in somebody's bullet hole in somebody's head that in a corpse that they found in the alleyway, which is just like missing its hands. And these are little kids. This is like the most intense possible things that a child can experience in terms of violence. But on the other hand, he was making these exquisite drawings as a very young child that were, which we animate. So like, I really love that part of the film where we animate his childhood drawings. But you sort of see that he was able to think so completely in terms of the language of film, and that's something where they're coming to his house and they're like, that is not what they could do. That's sort of different from them. But yet he also got them all to go on top of his roof and get into togas, which were made of bed sheets, and play, a private eye in ancient Rome. And there's one moment where Robert Urcola, who's one of these street kids or says, to get the kids from the neighborhood to do this. And it's like he was already leading, in that sense.
You have to think that his mom's part of this too, right? Like this, gosh. I mean, it's hard to separate your knowledge of Scorsese's mom from the Goodfellas scene. At least it is for me in my head. But just this woman who's just this boundless source of energy, and he can just put her on film and say, "Can you just pretend that you're, a mom making dinner for these people?" Like, there's got to be something to the way that she is so hospitable and full of life that allows him to approach life the way that he does.
100%. I mean, I really think that you're right. That I also think that she's really an artist by temperament. Like she has the temperament of an artist. She's brilliant. She's so quick-witted. She can improvise better than anybody. I mean, she's up there with Pesci, improvising, and De Niro.
Stuff is great, but it's like lead.
So tell me, where have you been? I haven't seen you. You haven't even called or anything. Where have you been?
Mom, I've been working nights.
And?
Well, tonight we were out late. We took a ride out to the country, and we hit one of those deers. That's where the blood came from. I told you. Jimmy told you before. Anyway, it reminds me, I need this knife. I'm going to take this. It's okay?
Okay, yeah.
I just need to
bring it back, though,
Well, the poor thing, I hit him in his, we hit the deer in his paw. What do you call it?
The paw.
The hoof. The hoof got caught in the grill. Oh. I gotta hack it off.
Oh.
Ma, it's a sin. You're gonna leave it there, So anyway, I'll bring the knife back if they do that.
Anyway.
Delicious.
Thank you. Why don't you get yourself a nice girl?
I get a nice one almost every night, Ma.
Yeah, but get yourself a girl so you could settle down. That's what I
settle down almost every night, but then in the morning I'm free. I love you. I want to be with you.
Why don't you settle down?
How's your friend Henry there? Henry, what's the matter? You don't talk too much.
What you talking over? Being quiet for?
You don't eat much. You don't talk much.
I'm just listening.
What's the matter? Something wrong with you?
You remind me of when we were kids. The comparis used to visit one another, and there was this man. He would never talk. He would just sit there all night and not say a word. So they said to him, "What's the matter, compari? Don't you talk? Don't you say anything?" He says, "What am I going to say? That my wife 2 times me?" So she says to him, "Shut up, you're always talking." But in Italian, it sounds much nicer.
Yeah,
that's it.
What's that?
And totally natural actor. She's just so. I think that spontaneity and that sense of fun, that she had, I think was hugely influential on him. And also they had so much pride in him, both his parents. They believed in him so much, I think that was very important to him.
Yeah, and the way that the documentary sets up at the beginning, they seem like a real sort of source of home base and comfort for him, even during his first marriage, right? Like he sort of knows that he can always go home.
Yeah.
I wonder if that too sort of speaks to the way that he makes his art, that he surrounds himself with people that he comes to form intense relationships with and connection with. So De Niro, Schrader, DiCaprio, he just keeps going back to them. Is that about comfort? Is it about
Thelma.
trust? Yeah.
Oh, yes, I think it's about trust. I think, Thelma Schoonmaker, for example, like he sort of found her and rescued her from making a sort of ridiculous movie about the Supreme Court and gets her into make Raging Bull. She has never made a feature. She's only done docs, and here she is. He's like, no, you'll be fine. But part of it was because of her talent, and part of it was because he knew he could trust her. And I think that's exactly right. That it seems like his capacity to trust people is 100% necessary for him to work with them. Yeah, it seems.
Thelma feels like our guide through the movie. Like I loved, like every time Thelma showed up, I was like, oh, good, someone's going to explain to me what's happening right now.
Yeah, totally. Absolutely. She's the witness and she remembers how things were constructed.
Yeah, I love that. This is an off the wall question, but was there a reason that he didn't talk about Hugo? It felt like we went into every movie, and did he just not have something to say about it?
We didn't really cover it that deep. Part of it was that we didn't. There not a lot of interesting stuff came up about Hugo, but Hugo itself is a fascinating film, a great film. It's just that ended up feeling like, first of all, we didn't have that much interesting stuff about it. It didn't really have that thing where it was plugged into some aspect of his life in a way that I could find a way to make it part of the storytelling. So one of the things I really tried not to do in this is to create lists. Like there are other things, like there are also, wonderful documentaries. He made two great documentaries about Dylan, which are worthy of their own, thing. But in order for me to make the most entertaining and also kind of soulful thing, I needed to keep to my structure. And so that meant a little bit of sacrifice.
Yeah, I totally understand that. You're talking about 5 decades worth of work that seem pretty consistent. The stuff that it felt like he was working on in the 70s, it still feels like he's working on it in Killers of the Flower Moon. I am thinking, though, the one thing that makes Killers sort of stand out is the fact that he does that monologue at the end of the movie, which I constantly sort of go back to. Did he did he talk to you about that part, and did he talk about like why he specifically wanted to deliver that speech about what everything kind of meant in the end?
He we finished filming, really he was making that film. He was
Oh,
in
okay.
that film. So that doesn't have a complete, that's sort of incomplete. So I didn't talk to him about that specifically. But when I saw the film finished, I felt very much that, as you say, that it's fit in with his great kind of project of examining the nature of good and evil and the landscape of the human spirit.
Yeah, I think so. And this sort of calling out that we are both of these things. I mean, I think that that's sort of at the heart of your work here, is that, this is a guy that's striving to make these amazing things, but also is struggling just as a human being, is sort of struggling. And and I think that there's a real freedom that sort of comes from like, this knowledge of I want to be great, but I also know that I'm human. I'm going to make mistakes sometimes. This happens, and sort of living in that tension is part of his art. Yeah.
I think there's a kind of, whether it's that he's achieved it now or whether it's something that he's always had, there is a kind of non-judgment. He sort of accepts himself, warts and all, in a way, even, and also the characters that he's talking about. There's this sort of radical acceptance that I think, which I also think is tied to Christianity, actually.
Yeah, I think that's right. Well, sophisticated Christianity. Yeah, absolutely. I think that's right. Rebecca Miller, thank you so much for your time and for making this beautiful portrait. Like you said, what a fascinating career and a fascinating person to sort of sit down and study. And I hope that it came out the way that you totally wanted it to. Yeah.
I think, you know what? I did my best. I feel like it is everything like we could do. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
As you know, everyone's limited. Nothing's perfect, but I think it's the best we could do.
I love it. Mr. Scorsese, available on Apple TV. No more plus, I think, for them. So Apple TV, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Bye.